Okay, we're here to talk about rolling those things, rolling dice. Okay, I watched a bunch of videos recently, and I noticed this through line talking about the idea of rolling too much or making your players roll too much, specifically around the idea of breaking flow, getting players stuck, or having them roll in highly tense moments that would be better, I guess, dictated as opposed to imposing a roll. And I feel like I fundamentally disagree with this idea, but there are some caveats. So let's identify the caveats. Let's just pull those out of the air, talk about them real quick. So there's this idea of things like anything on a character sheet that a player is just allowed to do. Yeah, don't make them roll for it. It's just kind of weird and mean. I think it's I can walk 30 feet. Roll athletics. Okay. Why? Because don't do that. All right, just stop. You've become a better DM. Huzzah. Hopefully that's not controversial. What I'm talking about is more about those roles where something is mundane and you'll be told just don't have them roll, or something will cause the players to get stuck if they don't succeed on, so you'll be told, well, don't make them roll in that scenario. Or you'll have these narratively poignant moments and you'll be told, no, don't roll in those scenarios either. It's better to have a written outcome or to decide what's going to occur rather than having players roll for no reason. It's okay. In all three of those scenarios, the problem is not the roll. The problem is how the roll is being used. So I feel like that roles are a very good way to give agency to players in D&D. Specifically, they are made to feel unique around their skills. Skills are a great way to allow players to actualize the uniqueness of their character, especially if their character is not a magic user. And I think the more you can let them do that, it's actually better. I think it's a good game design principle to let people roll as much as possible and impart as much value into those roles as you can in terms of D&D being a game. Okay, so how would you do that in those scenarios that I was just talking about? Okay, the mundane task. Let's just use examples, right? So if you had a situation where there's a person who needs to open a portcullis and they're just going to spin the mechanism that opens the portcullis, okay, well, that thing would normally just work for basically anyone that has arms and the willingness to spin the mechanism. So you could just have them spin it and be yeah, it's opening. But it might be more interesting or more fun, especially if the person who runs up to it is trained in athletics and you say roll athletics. And they don't need to know this, but in your mind, you're not thinking pass fail. You're thinking, okay, if they get a natural one, they try to spin it the wrong way and it's funny, haha. If they get anything else but a natural one, they're just going to open the door at 5 feet per turn. The portcullis, the gate of the castle. If they beat a 10, they'll go a little faster. And if they get above a 20, they're going to open it in one turn. They're just going to slam that bad boy open, all the way open, no problem. Cool, so you've formed gradations of success. You've asked your player to do a roll. Now they did the roll. Worst case scenario, something sort of funny happens, and hopefully it's a little kind of a joyful moment. Otherwise, it's either no failure, awesome moment for this player, or super awesome moment for this player because they were able to do something that if someone wasn't trained in athletics, assumedly they would either not be capable or have a very small chance of doing the same thing. Cool, so that's a way of using gradations or a gradient of success as opposed to thinking of skill checks as pass-fail. That gets you out of that situation. Okay, now you can make players roll for mundane stuff and you're not really that worried about it. If anything, you're providing moments for more cool stuff to happen to make players feel cool. Okay, so the next one is this idea of players getting stuck. Okay, so you put a puzzle in front of your players, and if they don't succeed the skill check, they're stuck. They can't continue. All right, well, you shouldn't do this, but that doesn't mean they shouldn't roll. Okay, give an example again, because this one is a little less intuitive. If you're going to put a puzzle in front of a party, you should think about that puzzle. Again, this is a heuristic that I try to use. I'm not trying to be prescriptive. You should think of that puzzle in terms of how would anyone, regardless of that puzzle's or of the party's makeup, solve this puzzle. And usually the solution to like providing a decent in for that situation is, well, there has to be a solution that literally anyone is capable of to some degree. Now, maybe they wouldn't be able to navigate the dungeon because it's too broadly dangerous, but like the composition of the party should not cause the party to get stuck, or if it does, it should at least be comical in nature. It shouldn't be confusing to the party why they're stuck. All right, so let's roll it back. You have a wizard who's in a dungeon with the party, and there's an arcane door. And they roll Arcana to try to discern the meaning of the runes on the door, and they get a 13 and the DC is a 15. If they had rolled above 15, you would have just let them understand the runes and very Lord of the Rings, speak the word and enter and pass through, and it would have been, oh, that's so cool. But because they failed, they got a 13. Instead, you might say something like, well, you understand the runes on the outside of the door are some sort of magical configuration that each one has a meaning, and although you have a broad sense of like the individual meanings of these symbols, you're having trouble bringing them together. But I'd like everyone in the party to roll history, perception, investigation, whatever. Someone gets above a 10. You're like, okay, well, you're pretty sure in the time it's taken the wizard, and maybe the wizard is the one who got this check, that you actually have seen these ruins in this dungeon before, and there was actually a small bookshelf, and on the spine there was a book with these interesting ruins, but you didn't think of anything of it at the time, but now that you're seeing them on the door, you're wondering if maybe that would be useful. Awesome. Now they can go to the book. The book is just a blind solution to this puzzle that allows the party to get through in the case that they get stuck, even if the puzzle has a meta solution. And by that I mean the puzzle could be solved by the party doing some things as people outside the game as opposed to what their characters are capable in the game. You still have that get out of jail free card. Okay, so that's the second solution, or the second way of thinking about roles, which is always to say roles shouldn't necessarily be the only way to get through something. Generally speaking, you should never have one way to get through something in D&D. That will almost always result in the session stalling out completely regardless if a role is involved. Okay, and the last one is these like poignant moments, right? And this is the one I disagree the most with. I think poignant narrative moments, dramatic moments in the campaign are the best time to make players roll, because it is what creates drama. If you just give them perfect agency and let them do whatever they want in this moment, all the stuff they've done up until that moment doesn't matter anymore, because you've kind of given them a get out of jail free card for like their entire set of choices up until this moment. So what I do instead is try to provide perfect information. So let's give an arbitrary example. It's a really cliche, but say someone in the party has been eviscerated, where they've been cut from across their stomach, and it's a horrible injury that's beyond normal means of a medicine check being able to stabilize them. Okay, maybe there's even a healer in the party, but they're like preoccupied. They're a couple floors up inside of a keep or on a boat or whatever, and your ranger wanders up and fight. Like the ranger and I don't know, one of the fighter were fighting together, and this happens. Maybe it was from a trap or something, and now the ranger is left in this moment to make this decision. They're trained in medicine, and they're thinking to themselves, is it possible to save my friend's life, my companion in this campaign's life, by doing a medicine check? What you don't want to do is think of a number in your head and then say yes and tell them to roll. What's better is to give them perfect information in this situation, because what you're doing when you give them perfect information is you are transferring all of the, I don't want to say like the culpability, that makes it sound like someone is going to get blamed, but all of the responsibility of decision making onto the player. They have perfect knowledge. They made the choice knowing all of the possibility of outcomes. So in this scenario, I might say something like this. You know, as your expertise as a ranger in surveying the wilds and seeing horrible injuries, that this wound is fatal most of the time. Now, you are an extremely skilled practitioner of medicine, and you believe that you're capable of resolving this injury in a way that will save your companion's life, but the DC is 25. And you know that if you mess it up, it might result in immediate death saving throw failures for this character. So you've given them all of the information. Now they're looking at their player sheet, looking at their medicine check number, and looking at the player across the table, and they're like, what do you think I should do it? And the player's like, go for it. And then they roll, and maybe it's awesome, maybe it's middling and nothing that bad happens, or maybe the character dies. But no matter what, you have given all of the information, all of the ability to make the choice of what should happen in that moment to the players, and now it is the players deciding with the rules you've constructed whether or not that is a good choice to make. Again, I think that moment, that situation is worse if you're like, you're just proficient in medicine, so yeah, you can patch them up, don't worry about it, right? Taking the roll out of it feels bad. I think putting the roll in is actually what makes that situation particularly cool. Okay, so I've been rambling, so let's summarize. You have 3 kind of heuristics you can use when you're thinking about skill checks in D&D that should help you allow you to roll more without punishing your players or getting stuck or feeling like it's mundane. So the first one is gradients of success. When you're having your players do something that you think that they should basically always be able to do, instead of having pass-fail, you change it into basically natural one is some sort of comical failure, and then degrees of success that are more awesome the bigger the number gets. The next option, or the next thing to think about, is if you're thinking about skill checks in terms of around puzzles or things that would get players stuck, individual skill checks should never be the end-all and be-all of those game design decisions. When you were designing those dungeons or thinking about those situations, you should always be framing them in terms of an out, something else the party could do to continue through this situation, and that skill check is only a means of circumventing that otherwise, let's call it, say, benign or maybe boring solution. You're allowing the player to cool their way out of a situation by having a skill that no one else in the party may or may not have. And then finally, in highly narratively poignant moments, instead of removing the roll, what you should do is provide perfect information. Tell the player right up front, if you're going to try to make this check that's going to result in your ally's life being saved, the DC is 25, and if you fail, it might result in some death saves being lost. And in that way, now it's up to both the player who is going to make the check and the player who's going to have the check made on them. They can have that kind of back and forth, and they make that roll, and now the outcome is sort of a narrative, collaborative moment, as opposed to a DM dictating what happens behind the veil of a DC the player didn't know before they made the check. Okay, so that is it. That is the video. That is me rambling. If you like this, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, all that good stuff. And hopefully, also, if there's anything else you think I should talk about, please put it down below. I'm hoping to make a lot of these, so I'm very open to suggestions about what I should dig into. Or if you have other videos I think I should watch and then like kind of do a rebuttal or do my take on them, that's good too. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you again next time.